La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Welcome to La Lanterna podcast. This is Fabrizio with, all by myself. Yes, because Matt is not with me today. He is on vacation. Well-deserved one. Good for you, buddy. Anyways, before we jump into the pod, I did manage to reach out to Matt and say, hey, buddy, you're on vacation, but you still have to send me some sort of a commentary about what happened in the match. So before we go into what actually happened at the Olimpico of Roma against Lazio, here are some comments, what Matt thought about the match itself.
Fabry, hey, it's Matt coming at you live right outside of Parque Genovese in Cadiz. What an amazing game yesterday. An amazing result. Huge to see the team completely respond. I think the biggest, maybe most encouraging part about the entire match, besides Retegui opening his Serie A account and starting his campaign for Serie A, is that Gila really changed the tactics up. It really worked. He recognized what wasn't really happening. Some changes in the midfield, of course, it changed the formation, and a couple of switches in the back as well. Everything paid off. Really excited, and what momentum ahead of Serie A. Unbelievable start to the season, and hopefully the sign of things to come. Forza Genoa.
Thank you, Matt. Now definitely enjoy your time in Spain, as we all want to be there with you. Anyways, let's go back to our match. Before we jump into the details, I want to have another audio clip from our previous guest from last week. It's Stephen Moore from the Laziale.
Unfortunately, as we predicted on the podcast, I thought the Lazio was going to come and take it to Genoa with a 3-4-0 kind of victory, secure the win in the first half, and kind of just toy around in the second. Maybe Genoa would get a goal late on, similar to the Fiorentina match, but it was actually the complete opposite, obviously, with Genoa walking out with all 3 points. I think Laziale, including myself, are quite disappointed with how the season has gone so far. Losing the season opener, losing the home opener. I think there was definitely better signs that we saw in the game, but overall, just, again, a very dull performance, whereby there's not really one player that I could say was our best player. It was just overall, despite the dominating possession, making passes, just the final third and the final pass was just lacking, unfortunately, and we couldn't get the job done. We couldn't put one in the net. Genoa got one chance, they put it away, and unfortunately that's how some of those games go.
Thanks, Stephen. Actually, that helps me to open up the conversation with you guys. So, stats at hand, we had 3 shots on target for Genoa, 2 for Lazio, and shots off target were 7 for Lazio and 2 for Genoa. So what can we say about the match? So obviously you heard both comments from both Matt and Stephen, and what we can see is essentially that the first half an hour, I would say, I saw a Genoa that every one of us was expecting, or more or less I should say that we were hoping to see. This reaction that even Matt has talked about was phenomenal. After the comments of Gilardino saying, I would throw myself into the fire for my guys, and I hope they're going to do the same for me, well, that actually did happen. In fact, the momentum, even though we were in Roma, in the Stadio Olimpico, essentially it seemed almost if we were playing at home. Now, all respect to our great tifoseria. So the Genoani were about 500-600. Some talk about 800. Anyways, it's in that range there. So it wasn't a very close necessarily, trip. Also because it's a very difficult stadium to go to, especially because of the non-friendliness that there are between the two tifoseria, between the two fans. Nevertheless, the match started very strong for Genoa. There was immediately in the few first minutes the possibility for Genoa to strike with Retegui himself again, and that was a header, a little bit weak. All comments, both in Italian and English, actually said that he could have done better.
Goodmanson, chip pass, great invention. Retegui so close, and really should have scored.
Genoa at that point was not done, because then we had an amazing cross that actually turned into a shot on goal that went all over the goalie, the Lazio goalie, and was ready to go into the goal itself, but it got the crossbar.
Goodmanson, Vasquez building nicely here. That cross turned into a missile of a shot. Provedel struggling, and Lazio survive.
But it was probably warming up to what was happening shortly after. In fact, at the 16th minute, right then and there, Retegui did his first debut goal in Serie A.
Goodmanson, this is where he can be so dangerous against Laziale. Chips it in, good header. And the volley. And that time, Retegui doesn't miss from the head. Genoa take the lead. Lightning reaction from the Italian-Argentinian. His first goal in Serie A. Big pressure on the 24-year-old's shoulders to deliver this season.
It was a very beautiful header after a reflection off from the goalie, with a great strike from almost outside the box by Friendship that was saved by the goalie, and then Retegui was right there and put it into the net. Around the half an hour mark, essentially certain things started to change. Obviously, Lazio was not willing to stand and wait and try to not go again for a second loss. So the match started to change. Obviously, there was a defense that needed to get reinforced. So one thing I forgot to mention to you is that the formation actually changed compared to the normal, typical 3-5-2 that we've been used to, changing it to what they call, quote unquote, the Christmas tree, which sometimes can change a little bit, but nevertheless, becomes a 4-3-2-1. And if we look at what that looks like, is Martinez, of course, in the goalie. Then from the left to right, we have Vasquez, which is incredible this year. Definitely a changed player compared to 2 years ago after the experience that he had last year in Serie A with Cremonese. And then in the middle, we had Dragusin with Bani. Both great responses and great matches for both of them. On the right side, we see the return of Sabelli. I have to say that even though a lot of fans are not fond of Sabelli, yes, he's not that tactical player, but he definitely brings substance, as we say in Italian, sostanza, and a lot of freshness and runs. He runs like crazy, and that's a great addition, and overlapping with Hefty, depending on who it plays when. In the midfield, a little bit of a change, because from the 3-5-2, now it's a 4-3-2. So in the midfield, we have on the left, we have Strittman himself returned as again, based after his match off from the red card that he had from last year. And then in the mid, we have Badel, or Badelli, depends on how you want to pronounce it. And on the right side, we had Friendship. So we saw this trio in the past, and it worked very well. And I have to say that it worked splendidly against Lazio. Then the two I mentioned to you, a little bit of a change on the trequartisti per se, or whatnot, which can also change. Instead of a 2-1, it can also be a 1-2. But anyways, the one that I'm looking at right now, it's talking about Goodmanson to the left, Malinovsky, the new addition player from the transfer market. Great addition. Even just a few days ago, it was almost impossible to think about a great player to be coming for us. But great addition. He still needs to get a little bit more of kilometers on his legs in order to sustain a whole 90 minutes. But definitely brought great support to the match as well in the front. Retegui, goal scorer, fantastic. This Christmas tree early on, if I may use that term of words, was fantastic. Mind you, going back to the defensive. So being it was a 4-3-2, we saw the midfield going a little bit more backwards, but it sustained the first half, and it didn't really have much except one small chance by Immobile, but didn't even give any preoccupations itself. Second hand, totally different story. At that point, Gilardino also tried to do some changes. He brought in some players, obviously, that was a little bit into the second half because nothing really changed compared to the second part of the first half. So it was all about Lazio. Mind you that except a couple of shots, as I mentioned to you, and one of them I can remember of Immobile almost doing a small cucchiaino, like a little bit of a small touch trying to surpass Martinez, which went above the crossbar. I didn't see really much to go into the goal or preoccupy too much Martinez. Anyways, talking about the subs that I was talking to you about, it all happened from the 70th minute all the way down. So we had Thorsby taking over for Strootman, Hefty taking over for Malinowski, Ekuban taking over for Retegui. So there's a 1-2-1 for Retegui and Ekuban, but it was very interesting to see the change in formation, which looked more like a 5-3-2 at that point. When you see essentially Hefty coming in for Malinowski. Then towards the end, almost like a 1-2-1, you get Sabelli coming out for Martin and Jagiello coming in for Gudmundsson. Gudmundsson, most likely the best player, but must not be forgotten also the amazing match that Vasquez has done, and that's not only based on the fact of the post that he has gotten anyways. So great performance, great match. We're still looking at a few players that might be coming in. Transfer market is almost over. Essentially it'll end at 8 p.m. local time on the 1st of September. It seems like we're looking for the midfielder coming from Turkey, actually, if I may say. It almost sounds like it's a done deal with Kutlu, even though it seemed like Crespo was the one that coming in. But Kutlu is coming from Galatasaray, is officially coming in. There are other rumors that are, in my opinion, not even worth mentioning, but we'll wait because there's so many players that need to leave. And just a few, I mentioned that in last pod, like from Aramu, from Puskas, from a lot different players that are just sitting there, Yalcin, Yeboah, etc., that are just going to hurt also our pocket and perhaps even block possibly any other new additions and reinforcements that we might be looking for. Anyways, having said this, let's go to our quick break because I might have a small guest helping me out.
My name is Fabrizio Cardone, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to the Antena Podcast Part 2. So as I told you before, Matt is having heyday down in Spain. So instead of having a monologue all by myself, I invited out another Genoano. He's part of the bigger family, like our sister company called Genoani Si Resta. And that's where I met Ivano. So welcome to our pod, Ivano.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Hello to you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here.
Well, listen, being that Matt is not here, I need some help. I guess let's talk a little bit about yourself. Why Malta? Why Genoano? Or, all that stuff.
Well, Genoano because, it's very typical. I born in a family of Genoani. So my father is Genoano, my older brother as well. I'm a bit afraid to confess this, but when I was like 3 or 4 years old, I showed some small signs of sympathy for Sampdoria. That's the really, really embarrassing past of myself. I was really, really small, but thank God my family redirected me to the right path.
They fixed you.
And exactly, right on time. Although my father warned me, like, look, do what you want, because if you choose us, it's gonna be amazing, but also very painful. So give it a thought. But thank God I choose carefully. I'm proudly part of a family of Genoani. My mother was acting like she was not caring about the team, but when we were planning in the most delicate moments, she was participating as well.
She's like our typical mama that she says, no, I don't follow soccer, but then, have the husband, have the kids and so on. And then like, okay, yeah, well, this is very important. Okay, yes, let's root for it.
Exactly. Sadly, is not with us anymore, but God bless her. I hope she forgives me for telling this. But once in the stadium, she always denied the story, but my father promised that it's true. She went with my father just to please him. But after a while, she was very pissed at the referee and she threw an umbrella towards him. Of course, she was too far away to hit him. So just sorry, Mama, for telling this, she wouldn't be happy, but just to explain that how she was. Like, she was, after all, deep down, she was also a Genoa. So the full family is Genoa members. Well, I was born in Genoa. I've been living for 25 years there, and then I have some experiences in Europe. And 2 years ago, actually in 3 days, it's going to be 2 years, I decided to move to Malta. I found an interesting job, and I wanted to escape from a small city in Liguria, not my city. I was there for working reason. But anyway, I decided to have another international experience. I enjoy being abroad and having new challenges in new cultures. And of course, this gave me also the opportunity to maybe improve my English. Although I've been told my Italian accent is still pretty strong, I'm trying to get rid of it.
Well, listen, from our past guests, there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, especially any type of accent in the English culture has never been disliked or whatnot. Actually, we have a chat. I will add you as well. It's like similar to our GSR, like the Genoani Siresta, but it's for English speaking only. So it's a Genoa chat only in English. So how is the life of a Genoano in Malta?
Well, it's a bit, let's say, different because, of course, I used to watch the games with my father, with my brother, sometimes with friends. Here, I found one Genoa mate recently. In general, it's, I arrived when we were basically sadly close to the relegation. And I was still managing to watch the matches in a, let's say, proper location in bars and so on, being in Serie A. In Serie B, the platforms that show the Serie B were not available, so I had to use the internet, let's say, to manage to watch the game. Being also in a part of a radio broadcast about Genoa, I wanted to watch Genoa, of course, but I had a further, let's say, reason for me not to miss the game. So I have to find some alternative ways now from this year. Thank God, first of all for Genoa and for us, but also for me, I'm able to watch Genoa through, let's say, traditional and official channels. Of course, I miss watching the game with close people, but I met this guy recently in a party, and when I was talking to a girl told me, you are from Genoa. I met a guy a few minutes ago from your city, and he has a huge flag of the football team of the city. And in my mind, I thought, okay, for sure this guy is for Genoa. It cannot be for the other side.
That's
doing
right.
Something like that, bringing the flag. Come on, this guy is. So I looked for him, and of course, he has this huge flag of Genoa, which was proudly showing. And so now we watch actually Genoa Cremonese, the preseason match together, and we are planning to watch more matches. So at least I'm starting to gather a very tiny nucleus of Genoa supporters. Hopefully, we'll find more people in order to watch, let's say, football together. But it's still good. You miss the team, you miss the city, you miss the people. There is a strong sense of melancholia. I am a bit afraid, but I have to admit, when I was living in another country and I was alone, I was watching the derby. And when I saw the choreography, I don't know if that's the word, of the stadium, I cried, actually. You feel it when you are in Genoa, but if it's possible, you feel it even more when you're far away. And maybe who listen to this podcast maybe can confirm this. So yeah, it's different, it's intense as always, and it's good. Hopefully I will be able to watch Genoa in traditional channels for many years, meaning in Serie A.
As you are part of the Genoani Siresta, you know that there are different type of Genoani all around the world, not necessarily English speaking, because it depends where you even move to and so on. But I'm just trying to tie back to what you were talking about, the fact of for now you're only one, now two. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, in my eyes anyways, whether you are one, whether you are 100, like, we know our largest clubs outside of Italy, of Genoa, anyways, are the UK first and New York the second one. But it doesn't really matter, because ultimately what we do as Genoani around the world are sort of like, quote unquote, letting people know more about what Genoa and the city of Genova is all about. So I'm not saying that we need to be so great, but we are proud of our heritage. We are proud of the Squadra più antica d'Italia, or the oldest team in Italy, and certain things that a lot of people don't know about. Like over here in Canada, like Genoa salami. I'm like, no, that's not. We don't even have like a specific, unless it's the one from Salto Cese, which is a neighborhood of Genova, but it's not known to have like a special salami or whatever. Anyways, as I said before, you're part of the Genoani Si Resta group overall.
Absolutely.
And obviously in the chat, you're very active, as I'm part of as well, because it's entirely in Italian. But I also know that you're part of a different pod/radio. Why don't you talk to us about that as well?
Sure. Well, I'm proudly part of the family of AleZena, which is a radio live broadcast actually, in local radio in Genoa, called Radio Music for Peace. Is actually very beautiful radio and environment, although I'm not there physically, because this radio and group of people behind this radio are very active also in many charity initiatives. So I'm proud to be part of that group as well. And this podcast actually managed by Andrea Moresi, a local DJ and radio person, in order to talk about Genoa. So in these days, talking about the football market, which is ending soon. But of course, right after any match of Genoa, we are gathering together with other people and commenting the game. We strive to create and develop a broadcast, a radio in which we talk about Genoa in a balanced way. Of course, we are strong supporters, all of us, so it's not always easy, but we try to avoid, let's say, strong discussion. Of course, there is debate, there is discussion, but to avoid harsh contrast, to be constructive, to avoid to be catastrophic when things maybe are not going perfectly. For example, the first match of Genoa this season. And it's a very nice environment. It's a growing reality. We are having an increasing number of audience every week. So it's very also nice to be part of this group and to see that we are having some kind of response from the audience. And so I by the way, I thank Andrea if he will listen to this podcast. And I encourage people that are listening to this podcast to, although, of course, it's in Italian language, but still can be interesting, can be found online. And I'm sure maybe Fabrizio can indicate this, let's say, link the broadcast of that show to his podcast.
For sure, I will put in the links. So it's just for anybody listening right now. Anyways, it's AleZena, so ALE, like Ale. Zena is Genova or Genoa in Genoese. So that's ZENA, all one word. But I'll put in the link for their podcast/radio. So whoever is interested in either improve their Italian or because you know Italian, you're more than welcome to listen to their pods, which are always entertaining. I'm going to take advantage of a few things that you talked about before. So you were talking about the calciomercato. Everyone is exhausted, I would say, at the very least, about this calciomercato. Not only about the instability that it's creating among the players, not only about the coach himself, which he has said that throughout, to say, I was expecting, these are words from Gilardino, I was expecting to be a little bit more ahead with respect to, the having the team how he was hoping for. But obviously, we use this word mogugno, which is the Genoese way to say complaining about how the transfer market is going on, the calciomercato is going on, and missing this player, missing that player, not understanding also how difficult and all the intricacies about this player cannot be given. Like your typical example I always give is about Zanoli, where we were looking for Zanoli, but Napoli doesn't give up Zanoli because they're looking for Faraoni, who was coming from Verona, but Verona didn't want to, all these intricacies are creating, and especially for this year, on top of others, it's a lot more difficult with lack of cash, and so on. So, Ivano, tell us a little bit what you think about this transfer market, the calciomercato, not only from a transfer market itself, from a Serie A perspective, but also from a general perspective.
Yes, I totally agree with what you said. I never heard a football trainer talk positively about this football market. Everybody is not, let's say, a great fan of it, and it's very easy to understand why. Of course, as you said, it creates instability in the team. Many players can be interested to look at the window, let's say, and look for opportunities. Maybe they are not happy where they are. Maybe they are satisfied, but they wouldn't mind receiving another offer, and so on. Of course, there are many. These influence the team and even the performance potentially on many levels, as you mentioned. So yes, I agree with the fact that it's a big element of instability, is an element of instability also among the supporters. From my perspective, it shouldn't last so long because it really lasts all summer, as probably our friends that were listening know very well. I would like it to be shorter. I would like it to thank God we are reaching the end, although we will need, I'm maybe contradicting myself, but we will need a few more days, I would say, to try to complete the team. Because from my perspective, we are missing some important elements of the team, some actually key elements. But yes, should be shorter. From my perspective, also the international system of football should try, let's say, synchronize, if this word makes sense, and end the market at the same day. Because once the Italian market will be closed, there will be also other markets, also Saudi Arabia, still active. So you can never sleep, let's say, quietly.
If for whoever doesn't really know, obviously, and I'm using these words very cautiously because I'm not that of an expert with respects to the regulation, to more or less what also Ivano was alluding to, the fact that I believe that all UEFA members are following the same calendar, more or less. The only one that I can think of that is outside of that, and it lasts a little bit longer, and I can't really remember how many days more or month more or whatever that might be. I remember it was being Turkey, that it still continues a little bit more. To Ivano's point is 2 months because it starts at the beginning of July, ending the 1st of September. So it's 2 long months. A lot of people are talking about, well, why does it have to continue all the way through when also the actual season has started? It should end a lot earlier, so it gives them, meaning the teams, an opportunity to build early on and then train for the season itself. These are all desires, discussions, but nothing from, I guess, the higher entities, whether that is a FIGC or whether that is UEFA, whomever that might be. I guess is eventually, maybe sooner or later, something might happen. I don't know.
We hope so. I think so, because of course we live in a already multicultural, interconnected world, but more and more and more year by year, and I don't see why it should be so difficult to coordinate this. Also, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. I understand they are not part of Euro, of the European organism of football, but I mean, we are talking about, in case of Saudi Arabia, 7 days more. And from my perspective, maybe I'm ignoring some important elements behind this, but I don't see why it should be closing in the same day, so 7 days earlier. So once the market is closed in Italy, and for each country, is going to be, of course, not there won't be any possibility to further moves on the market.
So now we've finished match day 2, talking quickly about Primavera 1. Just got news about, unfortunate, sad thing, that the Primavera 1 has lost 3-4 to Torino. Mind you, Torino, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Ivano, was the team that arrived second last year in Primavera 1, but they were way ahead of Genoa, and Genoa did a last sort of like trying to catch up with them, but essentially didn't manage to do that. And playing at home, we lost 3-4.
Yes, so to be honest, I'm not so informed about the team this year yet. I know that the preseason hasn't been very brilliant. Today's match, I was, let's say, following it until the 3-2 for Torino. It was actually 3-0. We then managed to score 2 goals, but in the end, yes, we didn't make it. To be honest, I'm not expert enough to know the current team, what can do. It's true that Genoa has I would say, a tradition now since a number of years of having a good youth team. So the expectation, and actually a very good coach as well, very good. So the expectation is always to perform very well. Of course, it's not always possible, but the hope is always to be in a good level. And besides that, which is important, even more important, maybe to allow young people to grow and to develop their skills and to be maybe, why not, eligible for the first team.
Oh, exactly. So just small more news about that. So yes, I can confirm that Torino arrived second in the regular season. Then obviously they went to the playoffs, which they only lost to Fiorentina in the semifinals, and who actually Fiorentina is going to be their next opponent. So just wanted to bring also that to the perspective, because we like to cover a little bit of also of our youth team, because it's important, because that's our future. And we also know that 777 Partners, which are the owners of Genoa, have always extensively said that that's a very important strategic investment also from a youth perspective. I guess it's important also that eventually we get some more important grounds also from the youth perspective and so on. So going back to Serie A, have finished our match day 2, and we're going into match day 3. So we're going to do a quick dive into match day 3, and let's start with Friday. So this will be our last match before the international break. So this is going to be the weekend of September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And then we'll reconvene for Serie A anyways, not the pod itself, but at least from a match day perspective on September 16th, that weekend anyways. So first match I have here is Sassuolo Verona. What do you think, Ivano?
That's an interesting match. I was hoping Verona, their team, wouldn't be so competitive this year, being in a vision, in a perspective of, first of all, having the thought of avoiding relegation, and talking about Genoa. I was hoping Hellas not to be so competitive. Looking at the market they did and the roster they made in the end, of course they should be fighting to avoid relegation, not more, but they are not as bad as I was expecting or hoping, at least. And I think at home they can be a tough opponent for a Sassuolo, which always, as always, an interesting team with interesting and young players. Sassuolo, though, doesn't seem to be as strong as let's say 2 or 3 years ago. So putting these things on the perspective, I expect a rather balanced match, but I believe Hellas could strive to reach the 3 points.
I was looking at the actual past 2 matches. So you have, and forgive me for not saying that earlier, but we have Sassuolo, basically 2 openers, both lost. The first one against Atalanta at home. The second one they lost at Napoli. So 2 games that we're playing outside and against 2 major teams. This time they're going to be playing at home. We also know that they haven't done really that good of a transfer market, as you mentioned, as Hellas hasn't. But Verona, on the other side, even though it is Calcio d'Agosto, so the type of soccer football that we see in August is never, it's the early ones, as we talked about before, based on the fact of transfer market still happening and so on. We have Hellas Verona at full 6 points. So they did win the first opener away at Empoli, and the second one surprised everyone with a win against Roma. I mean, coming into the play with 6 points versus 0 of Sassuolo, on the paper you would think Verona is just going to thrash it. But to your point, these are 2 teams that on the paper are not the best ones. However, they're both reacting differently on the results. But to your point, I agree as well. It could be an interesting match, but also could be a very super boring one to just show a very stalemate 0-0 or maybe 1-1. It's hard to tell. Okay, so next one is on Saturday as well, Roma-Milan. Talked about Roma, opener with a tie, surprising tie against Salernitana at home, and then the loss at Verona. While Milan, we haven't done with Matt yet a prediction of what Serie A will look like, but I have a strong feeling AC Milan is, if not one of, the highest contender for winning the Scudetto, hence winning the second star. Having said that, what do you think about the match?
I would agree with you regarding Milan being the most interesting team and maybe the strongest one. They did very intelligent and very high quality purchases. Selling Tonali, of course, was not a pleasant event for the easy and pleasant decision for the supporters and for the management of the team, but they could let's say invest the money received in very intelligent purchases. The first of all, in my opinion, is Pulisic. In my opinion, I'm not sure whether it's me not following enough the Italian media, but I had the impression that on Italian media this purchase hasn't been commented enough. Is a great purchase, potentially one of the best of the league, and is a very talented player who maybe didn't show fully, actually for sure didn't show fully his talent in Premier League, but is still very young. In my opinion, Chelsea has a responsibility over this lack of performance from this guy, but this guy is extremely talented. He showed impressive talent in Germany. I'm pretty sure actually he already started to impress in Italy, and I was expecting this. It's a great talent that can move, actually can change the balances, I would say, in a league like Italy. The match is very interesting, of course. Roma, I think we can give, if not the official communication, almost. I read 10 minutes ago that Roma and Lukaku have reached agreement on the economic aspect of the contract. So it seems basically almost official, the purchase of Romelu Lukaku by Rome. They needed a titolare, so a striker that could, let's say, who could start, who could fit in the starting 11 and actually provide the number of goals that this team needs. It's very interesting. They play in Rome. I struggle to find a pronostico, so to provide my provision for this match. To be honest, I would be tempted to say X, a draw, but everything can happen, literally.
I kind of go word on word with you. Obviously, as I mentioned before, Roma opened with that surprising against Salernitana. Mourinho is definitely not having his heyday with the starting of the season. A lot of people are actually saying that it might be his last season at Roma, where the expectations are getting higher and higher, and he's still not meeting that expectation, at least from a Serie A perspective. Now, from a European's perspective, he is delivering. Didn't win anything yet, but he did win the Conference League, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago. Last year didn't manage to win anything, but at the same time is still performing quite well from a European's perspective. From a Serie A's perspective, he's still staying below the top 3-ish type of thing, if not top 4. So this year it's going to be tough, and the opener does not help. When you look to your point also with the purchases that AC Milan have done thanks to the sale of Tonali. Chelsea, I can only say, we are biased obviously with our Serie A, but Chelsea as EPL is a spoil type of crybaby prima donna that can ruin a lot of players. And even though a lot of EPL fans are saying, well, he was not as good for EPL, so we're giving the runs to Serie A. I'm sorry, I'm going to say teams like Chelsea can ruin certain players, and that can only be benefited from other leagues and or other teams. So Pulisic in Serie A, he's always proven to be such a great addition to our league, which is important and beautiful at the same time. So predictions with respect to the match, it's going to be very tough. It's going to be played at the Olimpico of Roma. Milan, even though they did have their opener at Bologna, a walk in the park almost. Second half was a little bit more better on the side for Bologna. But the second match day against Torino, great Torino, because they still played well, but AC Milan was a totally different planet. And for what Roma is today, I see that it's an X2, meaning a tie, but also a possibility of a win for AC Milan, because I think, honestly, they are the strongest, even though a lot of people are talking about Inter being the favorite. Personally, I think it's Milan.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
Next match starts now. We're off to Saturday. We have Udinese Frosinone.
Again, I will be repeating myself. I apologize. It can be a rather balanced match. Udinese tends to start slowly. Sometimes they don't look like a super brilliant team. The management of the team, as let's say the quality of the management of the team, or maybe the resources destined to the team, decreased in the last years, and you could tell. You can still tell this by looking at the results the last year. The family Pozzo, the ownership of the club, as other interested as other teams in Europe. First of all, Watford in England, and I think Granada in Spain. A few years ago, Udinese was the main team, and the resources, the majority of resources was destined to them. Now, also giving the economic importance of Premier League, the priority has changed. The Watford and Granada seems to receive more resources, the best players, and so on. But still, I would say Udinese is managed in a way that is good enough to maintain the Serie A without too many struggles. So I expect them still, although I'm not particularly, I would say, impressed by their market so far. They still brought in some young players. Some of them I know, some of them, to be honest, I don't know. And I expect always from Udinese to find one or two players. So I expect them to perform. Playing at home, they could win. But I would say, let's pay attention to Frosinone. The team that, of course, on paper is, let's face it, is weak on paper. We say giocatore per giocatore, player by player. They are not impressing. But last year was the same. Last year they had a bunch of good players for the Serie B, but not so many, I would say. And although they built the team mostly by loan players, they managed to create a team maybe not particularly spectacular under the technique point of view, but they performed very well. They deserve to win the league. They on the pitch they showed a good offensive play, and so on. They changed the trainer, as we know. They bought, I would say, 2 or 3 very good players for their target and their level. I'm thinking, for example, about Khedira from Bari, who maybe in Serie A won't, of course, perform as good as in Serie B, but I believe he's still a good striker to target the Serie A, let's say, to avoid relegation. As I said, not a great team, player by player still, but unlike what many people think, I believe their trainer, Eusebio Di Francesco, who in the last years has performed poorly in Sampdoria, Roma, Cagliari, I believe it could be a bet of Frosinone that could result in a victory. Victory meaning it can bring out the best from the player he has. I believe they are not good enough on paper to avoid relegation, but I don't know whether it's their physical preparation that, let's say, has been planned to allow them to start with a better shape, or just the organization of the team. But they win against Atalanta. They had a bit of luck, but after all, they deserve it. And we know that it's not easy to beat Atalanta, but also with Naples, they performed very well. They were defeated, but played very well. It's not going to be so easy for Udinese. Although, if I have to bet money on it, I would say that Udinese may win.
No, it's a good one. Even for me, it's hard to actually give some type of predictions for this match. This is one of the ones that I would call it a tripletta, meaning it could go either way. It could be a win for Udinese, it could be a win for Frosinone, it could be a tie. I agree with you that Di Francesco has been showing something totally different than what we were not used to in his previous years as a coach. But you do have to say that he finds, also adding some players that Frosinone has added. Anyways, a great team together, because I remember actually he's one of your partners in your pod, Carlo Donani, which I always respect him as a very great journalist. He always says you can see teams like the Verona side or the Frosinone side or the Lecce side, which are teams with no major players. It's all based on that sense of team. And I think this is what Di Francesco has inherited from Grosso's great job that he has done at Frosinone, even though now they find themselves in Serie A. Having said that, from there to remain to Serie A, it's 2 different stories, but we'll see what happens with that. while with an Udinese perspective, you still have quite the good bone structure from the previous year. But I still think Udinese is like, what as we say in Italian, like a diesel machine that starts very slowly and then slowly improves throughout the season. I'll stick with the tripleta based on the fact that I cannot really call who is going to be the winner. So next one, still on Saturday, Bologna-Cagliari, playing at the Dallara in Bologna.
Bologna, yes. Well, I expect Bologna to be furious. I apologize to be Italian now and point the finger to the referee of the last match of Bologna. But in Italy, we all know what happened. I mean, it's always bad to comment a game talking about the referee, but the decision of denying a super clear penalty for Bologna is, let's say, all newspaper right now in Italy, and it was I would say, appalling decision. Also considering that there is VAR available, but however, I like Bologna. I like his trainer, although he didn't perform well in Genoa. I believe he's a prepared coach. He's actually, in the last hours, let's pay attention to Bologna. They are closing, it seems, for Saelemaekers from Milan. Although also Genoa is let's say, included in this transaction, meaning that according to some sources, Genoa will be buy this player. But I'm reading now in the last hour that it seems like he's signing for Bologna. Is, I would say, a good player for the level of Genoa and Bologna, intelligent purchase. And they are also closed like 2 or 3 hours ago for Calafiori, another former player of Genoa. He was too young when he arrived in Genoa, and it was a not very good situation, very easy situation. We were struggling to avoid relegation, and we didn't manage. But Calafiori went on loan in Switzerland, in Basilea, and he performed very well there. Very, very well. He was followed also by Milan. Maybe Milan right now is too much, but for Bologna, I think is the ideal move for him. It's a very interesting purchase, and the team is acting, in my opinion, rather smartly on the market, purchasing very interesting young players. I'm talking about last year, but also this year. I like the team. They are playing at home and against Cagliari, which in my perspective is lacking, especially in the offensive game. In terms of players, they seems to me very incomplete, let's say, in the striker roster. I don't see Cagliari so prepared for this league so far. Let's see what's going to happen in the last hours of the market. So I would place my bet on Bologna.
100% agree with you. I was going to more or less use the same words, just slightly different, to say Thiago Motta, which I'll always have respect for him, has been doing such an amazing job at Bologna after Mihailovic. But Ranieri, it's always, as we say in Italian, imprevedibile. Like, it's hard to tell what can happen with him because he's been there forever.
And a Volpe, Fox.
He's a smart fox, exactly. As I said in the last pod, he's the one that brought Cagliari as a surprise to everyone at the very tail end up to Serie A. So, it's still tough to see and say what that can happen. I agree with you. The transfer market hasn't been that brilliant, but we still have, recording today on Monday, we still have 4 days, if you could include September 1st left, and anything can still happen in order to bring a little bit more rinforzi, as we say in Italian, like the stronger players coming in. But I would give a win to Bologna. I've seen Bologna that has been playing very seamlessly, great additions and great game altogether. So I would definitely give Bologna the victory.
I forgot it, and it's very nice that you mentioned it because he always gives some experience and very important experience to the team. Indeed.
Agreed. Next one, second big match before Roma-Milan. I don't necessarily like to say that the big six sisters are the ones that we should always vote, because I will never be a preacher of that. At Napoli versus Lazio.
That's a good question, and that's a tough call. Of course, the instinct is telling me Napoli is playing at home. It's a super strong team, so they would be the favorite to win. And commenting very briefly about the market of Napoli, they didn't buy so many players. It wasn't apparently such a brilliant market, but let's remember they kept the two strikers, which are the elements, key elements of the team. Very, very important players.
For now, there's still 4 days.
For now,
most
yes.
likely no. But
in Saudi Arabia and not in Premier, you never know exactly. Well, I hope for them because they have a new trainer, a good trainer, maybe not as good as Spalletti, but still a reliable, experienced, charismatic manager as Garcia. They bought an interesting defender from Brazil. Nathan can be interesting. I'm not so convinced by Cayuste, both from France, but is I think a Norwegian player. So I'm half convinced by their market, but I still one very strong team. They are playing at home. Lazio, on the other hand, as we saw, is not in the best shape. I don't agree with the newspaper. Right now, the majority of the newspaper are defining Lazio embarrassing, and they are commenting the performance against us as despicable, as horrible. I don't fully agree with this. Of course, we haven't seen the best Lazio. That's also merit of our guys. But I still saw a team that can... adjusting something can be extremely dangerous. I think they will perform well this year. I like, okay, they lost a very important player as Milenkovic Savic, but they purchased good players. I expect them to perform well. And they lost the first two. If I have to put some money, I will say one, Napoli. But if I can dare, I will say draw. That's up there, but I will try to do it.
No, that's a very good analysis. I think that Napoli-Lazio is going to be a very interesting match. As I said, it's the second most visibly interesting or important one anyways from a Serie A perspective. Napoli has their market was basically retained most of their talent anyways, while Lazio did lose probably their best player for a long time, and Kamada is definitely a different quality of player compared to Milinkovic Savic, as you said. I don't know, it's going to be tough. Lazio was supposed to be showing up against Genoa, which you're right in saying that all media is pointing fingers to say that Lazio did not perform well and so on, but it's hard to, especially when you talk about the big ones and look at the smaller ones, especially from a neo-promoter perspective, they're not going to applaud the fact of the defense that has neutralized the quality of the opponent. So in this case was Lazio. But mind you, we've seen it very well, that match. And for a good part of the match, probably 60 minutes of the match, I would say it was all about Lazio. And it was only thanks to the amazing, incredible defense that Gilardino has put together to neutralize them. So that does not mean that Lazio did not show up. It only means that they were great. So they would have never said that if it was going to be against Inter, Juve, or so on. But because it was against Genoa, Lazio's not showing. And it's not fair. Anyway, having said that, I'm hoping, and for what I know and what we've seen about Lazio, I'm actually thinking that this is a tie. I strongly think this is going to be a tie because Napoli, I think they had a great run up until now, but I don't think it's going to be the great, incredible Napoli that we saw last year that ran away like Juve did a couple of times with the 15-20 points differential from the first to the second.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I agree.
Next match, a super disappointing from match day 2 Atalanta versus a stable but important side, which is Monza.
That's another interesting game indeed. We saw Atalanta losing in a very disappointing way against Frosinone, as we previously commented. But it's also true that they weren't lucky. They had two huge chances to at least reach the 2-2. They saw Scamacca and another teammate failed very easy chances to score, but nevertheless they lost. They didn't impress so much until now. Well, personally, I'm a huge fan of Gianpiero Gasperini. We know him extremely well here. We know his weak spots. He has weak spots. We know also what he is capable to do, and he showed it already. Of course, 2 times in Genoa and many years, sadly for us, I would say many years in Bergamo for Atalanta. So I believe, actually, to be honest, before the league started, I was expecting them to aim for the first 3 position potentially. I like what they are doing. Historically, Gasperini in Atalanta doesn't always start in a very brilliant way, but then it catches up. Regarding Monza, they did what they should have, what people expect them to do so far. They won against Empoli at home and they lost against Inter in Milan. Seems to be that although the family Berlusconi is rumored to be less interested in the team, it seems like for now they managed to have a decent team for the fight to avoid relegation, so I don't expect them to do so badly this year. For this game, I would anyway, more than bet, I would be in favor of Atalanta. So I would say Atalanta could win.
I'm in line with what you're saying. Atalanta is, mind you, that I wanted to remind everyone that now it's the 7th year of Gasperini at Atalanta. Done amazing with respect to bringing Atalanta to where they were before, like this yo-yo type of team, Serie A, Serie B, Serie B, Serie A, to a team that is consistently at least in the top 6. Even though we also know Gasperini has these, not only for the fact that he hasn't won anything yet entirely in his whole entire career, he does have these not only starting slow, but at the same time these seasons that are a little bit on the under the radar. Nevertheless, I think that it's going to be a reprisal based on his last match that they lost. So I would think that Atalanta is going to pull this one through, even though it's going to not be a very easy match, as Palladino, another ex-Genoano that we will always remember dearly. But I think that Gasperini is going to pull this one through, and it's going to be a win against Monza. Next one is, I'll skip for now, the Torino-Genoa. We have Inter-Fiorentina.
I was expecting Fiorentina even before us. To be honest, before Genoa played against Fiorentina, I was afraid. Then the reality was, of course, even more fearful than my fears. But I was expecting Fiorentina to be a really tough client, tough opponent for us. I was expecting them to be one of the best teams right now. They are a good team. I like their manager. Maybe he still misses something to reach like level as Gasperini and so on, but he's still relatively young to be a trainer, and I like him. I don't like their shirt, but that's not important. I think this is the worst kit this year. As a passionate guy about football t-shirt, I made this comment, but no, for what concerned the most important things and the football market, I still like the team they have. I think they made 2 very intelligent moves for the midfield. First of all, Arthur from Juventus, who poorly performed in Italy, but I believe is, I would say, the perfect element for a team as Fiorentina, for Fiorentina level. It's a good team. I expect them to be reasonably good this year. But as you said, they show some after the amazing game against us, amazing for them, they show some weaknesses. So they don't appear in full shape. While Inter is disappointing for the moves, especially for the strikers, and I kind of agree with this opinion. Although I still believe for the level of Serie A, they still have a good roster. Maybe for the perspective of next year, in the short term, mid-term, they didn't do amazing moves because they purchased rather old strikers. It's rather disappointing to see Alexis Sanchez coming back after he slammed the door last year. Also talking badly about the club of Inter, and also the Austrian Arnautovic. They still can do something for Inter. Let's not forget that the rest of the team more or less is there. I believe they will still be competing at a high level for the league, but not as good as last year, in my opinion. That's a tough call for me, this one. I would say 1x, but more 1 than draw, but Fiorentina hasn't lost yet, let's say, doesn't start defeated, as we say in Italy.
That's right. Just want to add some players that they have lost, which are really not to be underestimated with respect to the weakness I think that Inter has to their hand compared to last year. Skriniar, Dzeko, D'Ambrosio, Handanovic, and so like there's a whole bunch that they've lost, and very little, at least in quality, in my opinion, from an international perspective. Maybe from a Serie A perspective, but internationally, so European perspective, a little bit different. Having said that, I'm not going to really add too much. I think that I agree with you. It's almost a tripleta. I don't think it's a full tripleta. Just the tripleta is on, meaning Fiorentina's side, is just because if they have a great match similar to what they did with us, it's unbeatable. But if they have been showing their weaknesses, as you mentioned, I think it's Inter is just going to walk all over them, if not, at the very least, a tie. Next one, Empoli-Juventus.
To be honest, I always struggle to understand on paper how Empoli can pull off good season, because they always not having a great availability in terms of finances. Their market is always rather poor. Although I admire their youth, their cantera, the youth team, so they always manage to to introduce in the team, in the first team, some talented youngsters, and this year is no exception. So I expect them to have a couple of new young players. Their market, for their standard, I wouldn't say it even so bad, but on paper it doesn't look such a let's say great team. While Juventus is Juventus, I believe they have a good team. I'm not sure what they can achieve this year, to be honest. I cannot say if they can run for the second place or the fourth place, to be honest, but they are strong. I'm not fully convinced by Allegri. I'm changing opinion on this guy in the last 2 or 3 years, to be honest. Doesn't look like he evolved his football from my perspective, but I would say should be a 2, although Empoli needs to start to show something if they want to show that they can avoid relegation.
So 2 meaning a Juventus win.
Yes.
Of course. No, I'm just saying because not everybody knows what
that's why
is all about, right? So,
yes.
So small parenthesis for whoever doesn't really understand what this 1x and 2 means. In Italy, we have this thing called schedina, which is like your betting type of thing, which has been going on for generations, I would say. So when you want to bet against the matches, in the past, it was you had to do it against all the 10 matches of Serie A, well, differently depending on if they were 20 matches or not, plus some Serie B, some Serie C at times. But anyways, you would put 1 if you were to bet against the winning of the home team, X for a tie, and 2 for the away team. Sorry, just small parenthesis for who doesn't know this, of course, right?
No, I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's actually good because it's important also for people if they are interested in learning these different things. Anyways, Empoli, I agree with you. How are they still in Serie A? I don't know, but they have shown throughout in their history, they come up for 1, 2, 3 years, and then they go back down, and then they come back up. You are right. They have a very strong youth team, or at least a good cantera, as you called it, like investment when it comes to like, and similar to what Lecce actually is doing. But at the same time, Juventus is it's a strong team, so it's important for them that they need to show up and they need to do something about it. I don't think they have all that quality. I am definitely not an Allegri fan, and actually I think they are going to win, but just by the little notch of the match. So I do see Juve winning, but just because.
I agree.
Second last, but not least anyways, we have Lecce Salernitana.
That's another match that I'm, let's say, struggling to put fully on focus, meaning that I like Lecce strategy for last year and this year, meaning having a nice scouting around the world and around Europe, focusing on interesting young players. I like, for example, I don't like the attacking midfield they boast, to be honest. I'm not fully convinced by Ramadani, but I like a lot this Kristovic, this Montenegrin, this striker from Montenegro, very young, very interesting. He already scored. So I think that Corvino, the general director of the market and the technical area of Lecce, can always pull off some interesting players. And also this year, I expect 1 or 2 interesting players to perform well for Lecce. But I'm not fully convinced that they will be as competitive as last year. Last year, we can remind our audience that they did a very nice year, especially the first half. Then they started to struggle, and in the end they vaguely risked the relegation, but in the end they avoided relegation in a, I would say, all in all safe way. I expect this year them to struggle more, while Salernitana, I believe they are slightly better than them. As a, let's say, provision is a tough game. Could be a draw, 1x, but I'm being honest with you, I'm struggling on this one. I would say 1x, 1.
So you see a little bit more Lecce edging over Salernitana. It's tough to say. I agree with you. Lecce, on one hand, has shown a little bit surprise in a way. Salernitana has only showed a little bit of stability compared to last year rather than strength. From their perspective. I can see Lecce winning this one, but I'm almost thinking that this is another tripleta. Like, instead of looking at these tripletas with the big teams, this time we're seeing a lot of tripleta with the medium lower teams per se. I don't know. I can't really add anything to that. The fact that I want Lecce to lose just because I want to see them go down, but I guess also for Salernitana. But
Yes.
from two things I want to say. From a roster perspective, Salernitana on the paper is way stronger, but we've seen Lecce pulling out something incredible. It's still Calcio d'Agosto, so let's be cautious about that. However, from a Lecce perspective, I don't know. It's hard to tell. One thing I want to say against them, and has nothing to do with this match, and I'm looking at Lecce from last year winning the Primavera. 100% of the players, and I have nothing against foreigners because I'm one of them in a way, not even one Italian in their Primavera. So I'm sorry, but I don't like that.
To be honest, I wasn't informed about this level of, when I commented that I like this strategy, I was referring to the first team. I like always the idea on investing on youngsters, but I agree with you. What is interesting for me, and in our defense, as we are not so, let's say, so sure about the result and so confident, is that the beauty of this league is, in my opinion, the balance. On paper, I see a lot of balance, a lot of equilibrio. I see that many teams for different, let's say, dividing the league in different sub-leagues according to the different targets. I see many teams being on a similar level, and so a lot of games can be very open in terms of possible result, and that's the beauty of it.
Which is a good thing in a way from a league's perspective. For us, maybe a little bit less, but
I was getting there. Yeah.
We fall into that as well, so that kind of comes to our advantage as well, and I think that makes the league more interesting. That's how we saw and we lived the Serie B last year. And the underrated Serie B, as we said it throughout our pod for the whole entirety of last year, of how Serie B is really underrated compared to even other prime leagues around Europe. Having said that, we're off to the very last, most important match for us. Sunday, September 3rd, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for us in North America, or 18:30 or 6:30 p.m. in local time. Torino at the Olimpico di Torino. We have Torino versus Genoa. Very two old teams facing each other. Juric's Torino against Gilardino's Genoa.
Well, it's I need to tell this to our audience and to you. I always struggle. Maybe I'm not the only one. I always struggle to make provision on Genoa matches. I'm too involved. On one end, I don't want to bring bad influence, bad luck somehow. It's very Italian, I know, but that's how I am in football. But well, we see from one side that Genoa, that thank God, is showed, besides the result, which is of course important, very important to build self-confidence in the guys, to give more serenity to the environment. Besides the result, it was important to see a growth, a very different approach to the game compared to the first game with Fiorentina. So we see a Genoa with still a cantiere aperto, let's say open field, meaning that it's still on working progress. We showed a great defense, as you said, great defense, and it would be very important to have this level of solidity, of organization in a defense in order to achieve a quiet salvezza, to avoid relegation. But we also have things still to improve, and we saw them also in the game with Lazio. So it's a team towards the right direction, but still not fully convincing, let's say, and that, in my opinion, a team that needs still 2 or 3 very important purchases from the market. In my opinion, we need to complete the team, but it's a tough. If this team plays as it knows with the new module, I believe it's a tough opponent. Can be a tough opponent for many. On the other hand, we have Torino. Torino started badly this season. To be honest, I like, for a perspective of a mid-ranking, I like Torino. I like their trainer, a former Genoa player and trainer.
Great midfielder. For us, was very, very nice player. Maybe he's a bit too emotional, in my opinion, when he speaks to the press. I don't like his style, but in terms of coach, for that target, he's a good coach.
I expect them to do their normal, quiet and safe league. Their transfer wasn't great, but they confirmed the best players that they were on loan last year. I believe Genoa can try to win this game. For sure, Genoa has everything to play evenly against Torino, in my opinion, but we need to be careful. For me, it's difficult, to be honest, to believe 2 consecutive wins for Genoa away.
Sorry, so quote unquote, here is an example of your Genoese style of negativity, and it's not a bad thing. It's just how nature of Genovese are. Sorry, go on.
That's true. I have this component in me, to be honest. Now I was referring to that maybe, but I was referring also statistically speaking. I mean, even if the game, the team was not Genoa, but a similar level, I don't know. I was trying to reason also in this logic. Whether it makes sense or not, I'm not sure. But let's say that Genoa has everything to go home with 1 point, I would say. So I'm trying to be balanced, not to be too negative, not to be too enthusiastic after the very nice game still with Lazio. I hope and see a possible draw. But let's be honest, that's not easy.
It's not easy at all. I'm going to open it by saying Genoa has already shown and proven changes compared to its history, especially on its recent history, where we have never won the opener of the away match in Serie A after being promoted. So winning at the Olimpico, which, by the way, we haven't been winning in the Olimpico, if I'm not mistaken, since 2017, 18 or something like that against Lazio. But that was also a squad that was being in Serie A for quite a bit. Not to mention, and I don't want to get into it, the friendship that there was going on between Lotito and Preziosi, which in my opinion, there has to be something about that, but let's leave it at that.
I agree.
Having said that, Torino, Genoa, 2 great teams, old friendships among the 2 fans. Juric has proven last year to be such a great coach, to your point, a mid-higher end of the table. So how we used to call it, la parte sinistra della classifica, which means the left side, which means on the first top 10, essentially. However, the openers for Torino has not been at all pretty good. No, actually, has not been good at all. So I'm seeing a very good tie, but, against this Cagliari, which we still don't know where they stand, compared to the second match, which they did play very well, but they got thrashed by AC Milan. So you would say, well, shit, if they're going to lose against the team is going to win the Scudetto, by all means, right? So to that point it's hard to say that Genoa is going to win. Not only because, yes, we do see a lot more. One thing that I said in the first half, Malinowski, I think it's a great addition to our team. We're still yet to see the other new players. So we did see Thorsby, we did see Martin, as a new additions really to the team. But to your point, we still are missing key players that are more perhaps on the bench sort of thing, and or maybe the future Badel, because even though he might not have been voted unanimously as the best player, I think he definitely was, if not definitely one of the top 3. So having said that, we are still looking for a great midfielder and a lot of replacements for, I guess, benchers, for change of tactics for Gilardino when he needs to have that. Juric, as you said, great ex-Genoa player. He is a Gaspariniano, which means that he follows that great style of attack that he learned from Gasperini. So it's going to be a tough one. But if I look at on the paper, Gilardino has shown to us, even though he was like one of the best strikers in Italy, he has shown to be a very good strategic coach when it comes to defense. Is it a tripletta or not? I don't know. I think all chances are open.
Sure.
Can Genoa succeed again in another away match? But I don't foresee any issues of a great exodus of Genoani going over to Torino. I think it's just going to be a great match. And no matter what, even if we do lose, as long as we play well. And that's all we care.
I totally agree with you. We don't start defeated. I think the defensive element that I mentioned first, that you also mentioned, I think is going to be a key element, and not only for this game, but for our season. if we confirm, of course, it's a different league comparing to Serie B, but we confirm the stability and the defensive skills, the organization in defense that we showed last year and we showed in this game with Lazio. I think that's a very important first step to build the house, which is called, let's say, salvezza. So to avoid relegation, it's the first brick, with the fundamental, so the roots of the house.
Absolutely, you're right. I'm just going to close it by saying after Torino, it's going to be, once I said before, just repeating myself, but we're going to have the national break. So it's going to be great to also reconnect and focus again on what we have learned from the first three matches. And finally, after the transfer market, to see whomever needs to be integrated within the team. So after the break, we are going to face at home against the former Campione d'Italia, so Genoa against Napoli on the 16th of September, and it was on that weekend. Then we are going to go on an away match at Lecce, and we thought it was going to be a little bit easier, but doesn't seem it's going to be that easy. And then we're going to have another couple of important matches like Genoa-Roma, which we don't know how Mourinho is going to arrive to Genova, and an Udinese-Genoa, so at Udine, and continue, because then we have AC Milan, Atalanta, and so on. So anyways, it's Serie A, guys. Welcome back to Serie A. I think we are at a wrap. Ivano, what can I say? Thank you for filling in for Matt. It was a pleasure, an honor to have you with us, or with me in this case. So just to remind everybody on the pod, if anybody wants to reach out to you, how can they reach you?
Well, I would be happy to. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's, I believe, a tough job to replace Matt, but it has been a pleasure to be invited and to participate. It was very fun. I hope our audience enjoyed. I send a warm greeting from my side to everybody. And to reach me, I can provide my Facebook profile. I'm super happy to get in contact with not only people in Malta, of course, but to Genoani all over the world. It would be a huge privilege, actually. So
I'll definitely put all the links to your profiles on the different social media. Just as I always say, reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Drop us a like, drop us any comment, and never forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa.
Forza Genoa.
You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.